we would like to welcome back our special Quidditch correspondent, our sister Abby.
Hi, guys.
Hey, welcome back.
Thanks. It's okay to be here, I guess. I have some terrible news today.
Can you tell us about your terrible news, Ab?
Well, you get a season rolling, have some ups, some good ups, and then, hey, let's just have all that hope, dreams, just dashed. Hands of Professor McGonagall. Used to like her. Not anymore. I don't really even have much more to say on it. I mean, she just canceled our season. What is the reason? Please, tell me. Quidditch team just seems to be intact.
So, it sounds like there was another attack. You don't seem to be convinced that that's a good reason to stop the match.
There's risks involved always. Even this season, we've had broken bones, crashes, stumbles, but nobody has attacked Quidditch yet.
So it's sounding like, Ab, that the cancellation of the game has left you sort of speechless.
I mean, there are no words.
What are your thoughts?
What it is.
What are your thoughts then on the rest of the season being canceled because of the imposed curfew and regulations?
It's a travesty. I mean, I can't believe coming from our own head of house. We're done. Ridiculous.
Do you think McGonagall is directly responsible for making that decision? Or are you shooting the messenger here?
To save my grades, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. Well, sports fans, I guess this is the last time you're gonna hear from me. Making my job an easy day, and the rest of the year, I guess I'll take off. Hopefully we'll see you next season. Until then, keep your heads up, and there's always next year.
Thanks, Ab.
Thanks, Ab.
You're welcome.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast that must not be named. I am Luke.
Melissa here.
And we are doing Chapter 14 of Chamber of Secrets, Cornelius Fudge. This chapter was 16 pages, and that is 4.69% of this book. Melissa, tell us what happened.
Harry recounted to Hermione and Ron what he learned from Riddle's diary, but no one could believe that Hagrid could have been the cause of someone's death. As the months passed by, no one else was attacked, and life seemed to return to normal. Second-year students spent the Easter break choosing new classes for the upcoming fall. With so many options, no one knew what to choose. Hermione chose everything, and Harry just decided to stick with whatever Ron did. One day, after a long Quidditch practice, Harry comes back to the dorm to find the room destroyed. All of Harry's stuff has been thrown everywhere, but only Riddle's diary was missing. The boys, and Hermione, realized that only a Gryffindor had the password and could have taken it. On the morning of the Quidditch match, Harry, Ron, and Hermione left the Great Hall, and Harry again heard the bodiless voice. Hermione, convinced that she had figured something out, ran off to the library without further explanation. Harry and Ron headed off to the Quidditch pitch. As the game was about to start, Professor McGonagall marched onto the field, announcing the game's cancellation, and directed everyone to return immediately to their common rooms. Everyone, that is, except for Harry. Well, and Ron, too. She took the boys to the hospital wing, where they saw Hermione had been petrified. Along with the Ravenclaw girl, they saw the night they turned into Crabbe and Goyle. Later that day, McGonagall read the new rules, including a curfew and mandatory teacher escorts. Instead of staying put, however, Harry and Ron plotted to visit Hagrid to ask about what happened when he was expelled. They decided to use the invisibility cloak to sneak out. Sneaking out of the castle proved difficult with the increased security. Ron and Harry made it to Hagrid's, who seemed jumpy and nervous. Soon, more visitors came. Harry and Ron hid under the cloak as Dumbledore and Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic, walked in. Fudge insisted on taking Hagrid as a precaution to Azkaban, the wizard prison, while Dumbledore argued that Hagrid had his full support. Then Lucius Malfoy showed up with the news that the 12 governors of Hogwarts decided to suspend Dumbledore because of the attacks. Dumbledore peacefully agreed, but not before warning Malfoy that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those that ask. As they all leave, Hagrid started ranting about following spiders to learn some stuff. The adults finally departed, leaving behind a shocked Ron and Harry.
So, that's a good chapter. A lot happened. We only had one new character introduction, though. That's a lot of different scenes for one new character, and that was Cornelius Fudge, the Minister of Magic. I also didn't see any new locations in this chapter. We had another mention of Azkaban, but we were introduced to that last chapter or the chapter before, I can't remember. And we did have some new magic vocabulary. What'd you find in this chapter?
So we got some new classes. We have arithmancy, which I always say wrong.
Arithmancy?
Arithmancy? Maybe it's that. Arithmancy? I don't know. Study of ancient runes, divination, muggle studies. They mention care of magical creatures as well in there because Ron talks about how Charlie took that class. And then later on, Hermione is reading the book Ancient Runes Made Easy.
Okay, so the illustration in this chapter looks like it is maybe the note that Mr. Malfoy is brandishing with the different signatures of the Hogwarts school governors.
It does say 12 at the top, XII.
Oh,
so yeah, we're going to go with 12, probably signatures.
Yeah.
Not including John Hancock.
Yeah, no, he's not involved.
Oh, well.
Could be.
Yeah, maybe.
But not likely. Nothing real special about it. It's just the scroll of paper. So, let's get into our notes this chapter. There were a lot of different scenes in this chapter, more than usual.
All right, so I have, dear listeners, we're going to do this a little differently. Usually Luke and I have, almost like our random thoughts, and we just sort of share. But this time, we only have one random thought before we get into sort of an in-depth discussion. And my random thought is, I want to see a Mandrake party. I don't want to hear it because it would knock me out, but I would like to see it, to see what happens when they all start, hitting adolescence and throwing parties together.
Yeah. Is this where they start moving into each other? She talks about them wanting to move into each other's...
Once they move into, that's when they're going to be ready to go. But right now they're just throwing a big raucous party.
Yeah, definitely pretty funny.
Yes. However, this chapter had so many big things. So we're just going to take point by point and sort of discuss our overall feelings of each one. So we're going to talk about each of these things in order. There were 6 different scenes in this book. The first scene was just our big 3 talking about the idea of it being Hagrid as the bad guy and letting us know that 4 months had passed since there was any attacks, that, the crazy sort of settles down.
We have a mention of Fluffy. They kind of a callback to why Hagrid is a pretty good candidate for having large magical creatures around. He's clearly already done that some.
I like that it shows with the passing of time, how life sort of settles back into routine, with Peeves finally discontinuing the Potter You Rotter song. I like that comes back again. And then Ernie Macmillan actually speaking to Harry, not to actually say anything other than, please pass me something, but does actually use words in his direction. So that's huge improvement.
Yeah, he politely asked to pass a bucket of leaping toadstools in herbology.
So that was a good little breathing moment that the book needed, because a lot has been happening, and as the rest of the chapter shows, a lot more happens, but it was nice to have these 2 pages to sort of breathe through normal everyday life.
Right. So yeah, we're moving into March, right? That's
March, April, Easter holidays. This is February, March-ish. Yeah, there hasn't been any attacks
this first scene. Yep.
Nearly Headless Nick. So life is sort of calming down.
Yeah, and I like how, Ron is like, oh, that'd be a cheerful visit, because they basically say, do you think we should go and ask Hagrid about how we got expelled?
Right.
And Ron's just like, well, that'd be a cheerful visit, said Ron. Hello, Hagrid. Tell us, have you been setting anything mad and hairy loose in this castle lately?
That's funny. Vignette number 2 gets into sort of their Easter break, which I assume is maybe just a few days long, and because nobody seems to leave. They all just sort of hang out there. And it gets into them picking new classes. So again, it's just sort of a page that lets the story breathe, and the daily
still normal things are happening.
Kids have to worry about. So I like that. I like them having to sort of choose classes and getting advice, and the different character moments of Neville asking everybody and Hermione listening to nobody and Harry having no idea what to do and imagining going to the Dursleys, who we haven't heard from in a while. So it's nice to sort of get that Dursley callback of imagine them trying to help me. That's hysterical.
Yeah. It's another good little reference to the Dursleys and how little they are actually beneficial for Harry.
Scene 3, Harry returns from Quidditch and finds his room has been ransacked. And the big plot point here is Riddle's diary has been stolen.
Bum, bum, bum.
That's pretty huge.
And then they're pretty convinced that it's a Gryffindor that has had to
Yes.
have taken it, which is, to me, it's a little bit of a stretch. They just infiltrated another common room. Who's to say that no one would do the exact same thing to them? Not that they have a specific reason to think that anyone would be, but they just did this.
Like, they proved
Last
that
chapter,
it is possible.
they just did this.
Yep.
How is it not like, oh, well, maybe someone did something similar to what we did? No, we're the only ones that could possibly think that way.
Yeah. Us as second years, we're it. Just us.
Come on, guys. Like,
I know.
Come on.
Let's start thinking about some other people.
Right.
Then after that, scene 4, I'm telling you, we keep jumping, is now the morning of the first Quidditch match, which I like at first because that's when they sort of are looking up and down the table going, who could have broken in? Who could have
It's not
stolen
the first
it?
Quidditch match, just the...
Of the next Quidditch
Yeah.
match. I'm sorry. The following day is the Quidditch match. And they're looking up and down the table going, who could have done it? Who could have stolen it? I know it's one of you.
Mhm.
Again, tying back to that whole, really? It has to be a Gryffindor? Are you sure?
Right. Yeah, I
thing.
know, right? And
Yep.
and then, they're starting to leave the Great Hall to get his Quidditch stuff, and he hears the voice again.
Uh-huh.
Kill this time. Let me rip. Tear.
Yeah. Let's notice that he finally stops and doesn't follow it, but actually goes and does what he's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But then Hermione does her Hermione thing and was like, oh, I got it. And doesn't explain and leaves, which I love. I think that's really funny.
Yeah.
But then they get to the game.
With that, there's a funny line. She goes, Harry, I think I've just understood something. I've got to go to the library. And she sprinted up the stairs. What does she understand? Said Harry drastically, still looking around, trying to tell where the voice had come from. Well, it's more than I do, said Ron, shaking his head.
And that is just the theme of Ron's life.
Mm-hmm.
Hermione always understands loads more than he does.
Yep, and I think he's coming to grips with that.
Yeah.
He's fine
And he's
with
okay with it. She can just know more. It's totally cool.
Yep.
But then McGonagall marching on the field. Has a Quidditch match ever been canceled before?
I don't know. I mean, the balls were already in the air. Like,
Right?
like,
Imagine
I
trying
think
to
she
wrangle
just
them back
hadn't
in.
released the snitch, because that's, I
Oh.
think, the final...
True.
But yeah, like, the quaffle... Well, no, I guess it's when she tosses the quaffle in the air. But, like, the bludgers were in the air, I think,
Right.
and maybe the stitch was out. I don't know.
It just says she released the balls.
Yeah.
So,
Standing in a huddle. Okay, yeah, so that seems a little off.
Yep.
But,
yep, I can't believe they canceled it. But, like, that's amazing that they canceled the match.
Mhm.
And then you find out that it's because there was another attack, and it was Hermione,
yeah, another double attack. Hermione and a Ravenclaw prefect.
who we recognize.
We don't have a name yet, but...
No, but it's like the same chick that they had ran into when they were being Crab and Goyle.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So, like, that's huge. You know what I mean? Hermione figures it out. She's immediately attacked. Quidditch is canceled. Scene number 5, they're back in the common room with all these new rules, right? You can't go to the bathroom without a teacher. You can't walk to classes without being accompanied by a teacher. You have a curfew at 6 p.m. in your dorm. Nobody leaves the dorms. Like, no more Quidditch. No more evening activities. They're hardcore lockdown,
Mm-hmm.
which I get. Sort of. And most people are like, okay, that makes sense. Like, okay, that makes sense, totally fine. Except Harry and Ron, no. I know, let's sneak out.
Mm-hmm.
They make a plan to pull the cloak out again. So, like, more rule breaking. The last scene in the book, or in this chapter, they sneak down to Hagrid, who is a big mess.
Yeah, he enters the door with a crossbow,
Right.
right? Probably the same one we saw at first
In
time
book
we...
one?
Yeah, in book 1, sitting against the wall.
Yep, well, and he took it with him when they went into the Forbidden Forest as well.
Yep.
I mean, unless he has a collection, I'm assuming it's the same one.
It's not a big house.
That is going to be my
I feel like
thinking.
we would have seen that.
And then with Cornelius Fudge and Dumbledore, like, Dumbledore is arrested and about to be thrown in prison.
No.
Yeah, no.
Dumbledore's not.
Or not Dumbledore, God, my brain with the words. Hagrid is about to be arrested
Uh-huh.
and thrown in prison for doing nothing except maybe being the guy. So Hagrid is arrested and thrown in Azkaban
Mm-hmm.
simply because of what happened in the past, what they think may have happened.
Mm-hmm. With no there was no actual proof last time.
It doesn't seem like it.
Like-
And Dumbledore's like, no, that
He has
Like-
my full confidence
Yep,
in
like,
this.
I got him. This is not a thing. With that, Dumbledore gets ousted. Lucius Malfoy shows up, and they throw him out of school, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of things for one chapter.
Yeah, and... Okay, so I do have some random thoughts as we've kind of
That's-
gone through some of these. Let's kind of go backwards because I'm thinking about this scene
Sure.
right now. So at the end of this chapter, Dumbledore clearly seems to know that Harry and Ron, or at least has an inkling that somebody else is
There's some intuition that there's somebody in the room.
hidden in the room, and he, gives his big pronouncement or whatever.
Somebody else was in the room where it happened.
And there's a, like, that line where it says, Harry thought for an instant that, Dumbledore's eyes flicked over to them and then, like, quickly went away.
Yes.
And
Because he doesn't want to give it away.
right.
But it's
yeah.
almost like he wants a witness there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to be mad at you because I'm glad there's another person here, but...
Well, I don't even know
don't
if it's
know,
a
maybe
witness
not.
thing. I think it's more of, well, I'm not surprised that you're here, and there's information
But why,
that you
though?
need.
Why? What does Harry need to know any of this for?
Because it's Dumbledore, and there's always more information that he doesn't tell us.
I suppose. This just goes back to my whole, why does a 12-year-old end up finding out more than he should? So why does a 12-year-old end up knowing more than the 15 and 16-year-olds? Why does that kid need to know it and nobody else?
It's his book series.
It's so weird.
I know it's a little much every once in a while.
Stretch.
But-
But I will say, compared to the first book, this is the first time I'm really feeling like that, like hardcore.
Yeah.
Everything else they sort of fallen into, not because they've gone looking for it. So this one, at
Mhm.
least, okay, I'll give that to you.
Yeah.
And it's their own fault for being there. Nobody like forced them into it. So
Mhm.
it's just the Dumbledore kind of knowing they're there and being like fine with it that
Right.
seems stretchy to me.
So what did you? And let me check your questions before I ask this. Okay. So what do you think of the differences in Hagrid's pronouncement and Dumbledore's pronouncement?
So Dumbledore, like they both feel like they're being helpful, but Dumbledore is more of like the upper level, like
Metaphysical, high level.
help will be given. And Hagrid's like, here's the help you need. Go follow spiders.
So which one is more helpful?
Neither.
Neither.
I don't think one is more helpful than the other. I think they can both be helpful in their own ways. Personally, I would be more annoyed by Dumbledore's because I'm like, well, that doesn't tell me anything. I like literal stuff, right? So Hagrid, okay, follow spiders. I'm going to do that because that's at least something to do. That's a direction to go as opposed to ask for help. Okay, help.
Mhm.
Tell me what you mean. I don't know. That's just me. What do you think?
I think Hagrid's is more practical.
Yes.
It definitely is. But I guess we'll see if Harry can figure out what
Okay.
Dumbledore's talking about as we move along. Another note that I've kind of come up with, whenever McGonagall walks onto the field,
Mhm.
she's using a megaphone, for one, which I thought was odd.
Right. There's no spell that you could just be loud.
Right. I thought that was odd. And then, right after that, she lowers the megaphone and beckons Harry over to her. Potter, I think you better come with me. And then, Ron kind of walks up too, kind of saying, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, perhaps you should come too, Weasley. It's nice to see that McGonagall realizes that those are the two people that need to know about this for Hermione. Like,
But what about the other girl?
No, I know. And maybe somebody else, since she's a Ravenclaw, maybe Flitwick is gathering some close people for her. I don't know. But it's just nice to see that McGonagall is very aware of our trio's relationship, that all three need to be there together.
Yeah.
I just thought that was nice.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you.
Right, and that's why I'm thinking maybe she doesn't know the Ravenclaw all that
Maybe.
well, so that's not
Okay.
really her responsibility. But she probably told Flitwick, and he'll handle that.
And he's got it. All right.
Yep.
Good.
The different classes seem pretty interesting moving forward. Do you have a?
I do.
Yep. Okay. So I'll skip that. I mean, that's kind of really all I have. I think
Okay.
a lot of different things happened.
Well, and I think that's the thing that I'm finding as we do these. I'm noticing that as we're reading these, the chapters where a lot of things happen, I have less comments because it's just
It's action,
Events.
action. Yeah,
as
it's
opposed to character development or
plot.
metaphysical
Yeah,
thought things.
plot development is
Right.
where this is plot happening.
This is more like this happened, this happened, this happened. Yep, it happened. I don't really have anything in depth other
Mhm.
than like, yeah, that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Good job happening.
Yep. Way to happen.
It happened. We
And
saw it
therefore
happen.
it happened.
We watched it happen. Then we reflected on it happened, and then
And
something
it
else happened.
Still happened.
The end. All right, I do have some burning questions.
Oh, what are your 5 burning questions?
Would you have asked Hagrid about being expelled right away when you first found out, or waited until like that attack again, like Harry and Ron did?
It would have been interesting to see them interact with Hagrid in that downtime to see if they were like awkward around him,
Mm-hmm.
because they clearly have some background knowledge,
Yes.
even if it's maybe not the most useful or trustworthy, I guess.
Yes.
Because they can't. I don't know if they believe it. They don't know if they believe it. So it'd have been interesting to see them interact together before another attack.
But would you have asked up front, like as soon as you found out?
I think so.
Okay.
I think if you have something like that, it's a pretty big thing between you and someone that you consider a close friend.
Okay.
You should get that.
All right.
Clear the air.
Sounds good. Next question. What new classes would you sign up for?
I think arithmancy sounds cool. We don't really know much about it, but it sounds like math, which is cool.
That's what I was going to say. Also, maybe ancient runes.
Those are the two that I've always
Me too.
sound like the most interesting.
I will say, I want nothing to do with care of magical creatures.
I'd be okay with that, but I would choose the other ones first, I think.
I wonder, like, what the requirement is. Yeah, no, definitely no care of magical creatures for me. I wonder how many you're supposed to take. Like, what's a minimum? 2?
Yeah, let's just... Did they even mention... I don't think they mentioned it yet.
I
but
just wonder.
I think if we were going to have to pick 2, which I think
Okay.
that's reasonable. There's 4 new classes to choose from.
5.
5. What's the other one?
Divination, care of magical creatures, ancient runes, arithmancy,
Oh, and Muggle
and
Studies.
Muggle studies.
I'd probably skip Muggle Studies,
I
but
probably would too.
that's because we grew up in the Muggle world.
True.
But it is... I think Hermione still shows interest in that.
Well, she signs up for everything.
Yeah, which she does.
Sounds like
But
a
yeah,
Hermione
definitely
thing to do.
Ancient Runes and Arithmancy would be the 2 that I would sign up for. Divination sounds wishy-washy,
Right.
but could be practical.
Okay.
You never know.
All right. Who stole Riddle's diary?
The fat lady in the portrait.
Can she leave the portrait?
No, I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't know.
I would like to guess that it is some really obnoxious older student.
I was gonna think maybe like the twins as a practical joke.
Oh, I was thinking maybe Percy just to like be, you know what I mean? Give him trouble. I don't know.
But why?
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
what I was
You're
thinking.
right. Twins
like,
are a better choice.
Twins just to kind of
Okay.
pick on him
All right.
because they were there. They were right there when Harry dropped the diary, or was that later?
No, it was Percy in the first years when he dropped the diary. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I could see the twins being like, ooh, Harry's got a diary. Let's go.
Right.
Like, yeah, mess with
They
them.
look at it and there's nothing in it.
And then they're like, whatever, this is dumb.
Yep.
Yeah, all right, I'll give you that. Next question. Was it reasonable to cancel the game, which is hundreds of people in one spot, when the attacks have always been just 1 or 2 people at a time?
So you think there's a strength in numbers thing going on here?
Well, especially if you look at then the new rules and guidelines being imposed.
Mhm.
It's travel in packs, stay with your teacher, don't leave the common room, basically it's stay with the group, right?
Mhm. Right.
Safety in numbers. Those are the rules they impose. But the Quidditch game, which is all of them being together, that's not safe.
I think it's less about safety and more about being respectful of the students that just got attacked. And hey, let's not have this big sporting event immediately when this attack happens. And yeah, I just think it's a little
Okay.
bit of that.
I mean, I
as
could
well.
see
It's
that.
sensitivity.
I can see that. My, like, sort of counter to it, though, is they immediately cancel all Quidditch and extracurricular activities as well.
Oh, moving forward. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So to me, it's always one went with the other.
That's fair. I hadn't put those two
Yeah.
together. That's every time going to be a group event or
like
activity.
The design of the sport. It's a
even
group sport.
practicing and things like.
Right. And it's your team. So maybe the rules you have
And
to
we haven't
travel as
seen
a team.
any issues outside of the castle.
Nope.
There's been no petrification outside
Nope.
the castle.
So in my mind, I'm going to
So
go
yeah,
camp.
two for 2. Let's stay out of the house.
Right.
I don't know.
All right.
Fair.
All right. My last question is, what do the spiders have to do with anything?
Let's see. We saw some spiders early on, right?
Next,
Acting funny and
where
walking in
they
single file
found,
lines.
Mrs. Norris.
Right.
Not right when she was there, but a few days later.
Right, when they investigated later on.
We mentioned how weird that was.
Yeah, I thought it was odd. Other than we saw spiders acting funny earlier in the book. It's not the first time that we've seen the spiders doing odd things.
Right. I just wonder why
I
they're being so
I don't
weird.
know what it could be. Maybe there's a pest control situation going on.
Maybe. All right.
So, Melissa, what was your favorite line this chapter?
Well, I have 2. And I don't have a runner-up and like a back. I have 2 favorites. Like, they are equally
You gotta pick one.
amazing. Oh, I can't do that.
You
You do
have to.
yours first then.
Okay, so mine comes from the very beginning of the chapter when Harry, Ron, and Hermione are kind of talking about the monsters creatures and beasts that Hagrid has already had. You know, they mentioned the dragon in the wooden house, which was a funny callback as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Fluffy. last year, and it goes on. They talk about it, and it goes, "How many monsters do you think this place can hold?" Ron asked dully. Like, it's a pretty good question. How many monsters are in this place?
Well, the Slytherins are there.
Oh, zingdom!
Nice.
Zingdom.
A lot. It's a big castle. Lots of hidden magical spaces.
Apparently, I mean,
it had that giant
obstacle course,
right,
cavern
under the 3rd floor.
Yeah, it was still miles below.
Miles below the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
Nothing to say about the 1st and 2nd floors that were underneath that 3rd floor, but miles under the 3rd floor. So I'm thinking you could hold a lot of crazy.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. All right.
Have you decided which is your favorite? Which is your runner-up?
I'm having a really hard time with it, though. So I think my runner-up is going to be a Ron line. It's a really good one, though. So I feel like if my favorite line wasn't in this chapter, this would be my favorite line almost overall. But the other one, we'll see. I'm having a really hard time with this. So my backup line is right after what you talked about earlier with Hermione running off to the library. They're like, what does she know? Loads more than us. So then, Harry had asked, well, why is she going to the library? Because that's what Hermione does, said Ron, shrugging. When in doubt, go to the library.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's classic Hermione and classic Ron, and it's wonderful.
Because that's what she does.
It is.
When in doubt, go to the library. Makes sense. That's
where
Hermione
all the information is.
Right.
Yeah. However, my favorite line, it's one of those quotable, put on your wall kind of Dumbledore insightful lines. And it sort of, maybe not so much on your wall, but it's definitely the deep thoughts by Albus Dumbledore.
Deep cuts by Albus.
Yep. However, said Dumbledore, speaking very slowly and clearly, so that none of them could miss a word, you will find that I will only truly have left this school when none here are loyal to me. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. It's just that's Dumbledore. That's Hogwarts. That's...
I think I'm less in love with this line than you are because it's not all that helpful for what they need at the time. That's the only
There is no immediate practical applications, but it's more of I feel like that's the vision and mission statement. Maybe I've done too many visions and mission statements in my life. But that's the vision of Hogwarts.
Just that last line that you will always find that help will always be given. You will also find that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it.
And not to be too spoilery, but as the series goes on, these two lines, I just feel like this becomes...
A major theme.
A major theme about any time you interact with or about Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm. And I think this does go hand in hand with what we talked about on Dumbledore and Hogwarts being almost synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
The royal Hogwarts we is usually almost always referencing directly to Dumbledore in some way. It's Hogwarts with Dumbledore. It has to go hand in hand almost every time it's talked about.
And I think that's why I picked it. It's not the immediate help.
Right.
It's the overall sense of this is how we are. This is what Hogwarts is.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you've ousted me or not.
Sure.
So,
and I agree that it definitely plays a large major theme thing. What I get different from this compared to some other Dumbledore-isms. He usually does have the put it up on your wall, specifically self-contained one line of advice that I just didn't get from this. That's the only difference that I'm seeing.
This is less advice and more mission statement.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's fine. And that's why I just maybe misinterpreted where you were going with it. But
all right.
So with that, who was your chapter MVP?
It was very hard to pick one this chapter because there were so many little moments. But I think I'm going to go with Dumbledore for his stating the vision statement of Hogwarts.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with that. How about you?
Yeah, I couldn't decide going into this, and I'm still having a hard time because there is so little one person doing something that's incredibly valuable.
Right.
But I think that I'm going to give my honorable mention to... now I'm kind of torn.
You have to pick one.
I know. But I'll tell you who I'm thinking of.
Okay.
I'm debating between McGonagall and Hagrid.
Ah.
I like the way McGonagall handled getting Ron and Harry together to go see Hermione.
Yes.
And how sensitive she was about that. And Hagrid because he does give them something that sounds more like practical, useful advice right now. And we learn a little... I'm going to go with Hagrid, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so basically I'm going to give it to Hagrid in that he gives them advice secretively, kind of. It was very...
It's a Hagrid secret.
Yeah. It was funny
Not
too,
really
the way
a
it was portrayed.
Yes, I'm with you. All right.
Hello, friends and listeners. I was very saddened to learn of the passing of a wonderful audiobook narrator, Roy Dotrice, who did all of the audiobook narration for George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire up through the 5 books that are currently released. So with that, my Audible sponsorship this week is going to go to his work on any of the Song of Ice and Fire series books, starting with Game of Thrones, if you've never listened to it or read the story. It's a wonderful book by George R.R. Martin. To go ahead and get that, just go to www.thepodcastthat.com/support us and use our Audible affiliate link to get your free 30-day trial and a free copy of George R.R. Martin's A Game of Thrones, read by Roy Dotrice.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. We are anywhere you are on social media except Instagram. We're not on Instagram, but we are on Twitter at Not Named Podcast. We have a website at thepodcastthat.com. We have an email, thepodcastthatmustnotbenamed@gmail.com. You can find us on any one of numerous podcast catchers that you can download and listen to.
Yep, subscribe and rate us on iTunes. Leave us a comment there or on YouTube.
Join us next week as we discuss Chapter 15.
Aragog.
Thanks.